In this lesson, we will look at configuring Symantec endpoint encryption policy options, enabling and accessing policy options for the management agent, drive encryption, and removable media encryption, including best practices for using recovery certificates and the background images for the drive encryption login screen. Symantec endpoint encryption uses the policies that you define and deploy to client computers, where the policies specify user and computer capabilities. Administrative policies are set on the management console. Administrators set policy for the management agent, drive encryption, and removable media encryption. Default policies are set when creating client installers. Policies are pushed to clients through MSI installers. Use Active Directory policy or native policy. Symantec endpoint encryption provides the following types of policies which are created and deployed from the management console. Those include install time policy, Active Directory policy, and native policy. Install time policies are default policies which are set when creating client installation files. These settings are created during installation and modified each time an upgrade package is applied. Active Directory and native policy take precedence over install time policies. Active Directory policies are deployed to users and computers within the Forestore domain. They are created and deployed regardless if synchronization is enabled or disabled. Native policies are designed for deployment to computers which are not managed by Active Directory. To deploy native policy to computers managed by Active Directory, you need to turn off synchronization to those computers. Here we see a list of differences between Active Directory and native policies. Active Directory policies are deployed to users or computers. They utilize the local, site, domain, OU order of precedence. They are created and deployed in a single pane. They are obtained from the domain controller and applied at each restart. Updates can be forced using command line options. Native policies are only applied to computers. They utilize the computer, subgroup, or group order of precedence. They are created using multiple panes. They are applied when the client checks in with the Symantec Endpoint Encryption Management Server. An update can be forced by clicking Check In Now from the client console. Let us now look at the differences between native policy versus GPO policy or Active Directory policy. These are both two mechanisms for changing client policy. Native policy means that clients can retrieve new policy during their scheduled server check-in. Active Directory policy means that the Active Directory Group Policy Manager can also be used to deploy policy for those who want to use an existing Active Directory infrastructure. Each client is in either an Active Directory group or a native group. A client cannot receive both native and GPO policies. It breaks down to this. Native policy is designed for legacy clients and limited use cases. Active Directory policy is the most commonly used type of policy. We do support the ability to push policy down to legacy clients. There is an issue that, in many cases, legacy clients support more options than the newer clients. The administrator will no longer be able to set these depreciated options when creating policy, even when managing legacy clients. If there is a predefined native policy object that has a currently unsupported option selected, those options will be shown, and that policy can still be deployed to clients in the field. Policy administrators access policies to do the following: configure installation policies resulting in client MSIs, configure and deploy an Active Directory policy, or configure and deploy a native policy. Policies and options vary, depending on which tool you use to access the policies. All of the settings and policy options are available in the Symantec Endpoint Encryption Management Console. Policies define certain behaviors of users and client computers in Symantec Endpoint Encryption. The first sets of policies that you create are the installation policies, which result in the creation of MSI packages. Once installation policies are deployed and installed, you can change most of the settings as needed. To make changes, define and apply Active Directory Group Policy Object policies or native policies. Policy settings always take precedence over installation settings on a client. While each policy type contains identical options, Active Directory policies are created and edited differently than native policies. Here we see an example of creating an Active Directory policy. When using Active Directory policies, you can select to have a group policy object linked to another. Changes you make here are global to the group policy object and impact all other locations where this group policy object is linked. As we see here, in order to create a new group policy object, we can right-click the container and select New. We can define the type of policy we want to create, either a computer configuration or a user configuration. From there, we expand the software settings and expand Symantec endpoint encryption. At that point, we can either select the management agent, drive encryption, or removable media encryption. At this point, we select Change these settings, and we select our new settings. You will see in the policy that there is an option to restore the installation settings. When this policy is applied to the client computer, it will disregard any existing policies. The computer returns to the settings specified in the installation package. There's an option to force an Active Directory policy update. Typically, an Active Directory policy change takes between 90 to 120 minutes. You can force this to happen immediately. When a computer or a user object has two or more policies assigned, the order of precedence and link order are considered. The order of precedence is local, site, domain, and then organizational unit. Policies specific to a single computer or user object are considered local and have the highest order of precedence in the LSDOU chain. To deploy native policies, first create managed computer groups and assign the policies to the group. Computers receive policy on check-in. Native policies are assigned to computers, subgroups, or groups located within this container. Before native policies can be assigned, computers need to be organized into groups. This can be done from any manager computer. The group structure is saved in the database. The container here has two default groups. Those are Symantec Endpoint Encryption Unassigned and Deleted Computers. Computers in the SEE Unassigned group do not have policies assigned to them, and installation settings are enforced. Computers are placed in the SEE Unassigned group if synchronization is not enabled, or the computer does not reside within the Active Directory forest or domain. Clients will appear in the SEE Unassigned group at the time the computer checks in. Computers deleted from the domain only appear in the unassigned group on the next synchronization. In order to create an SEE Managed Computers group, expand the Symantec Endpoint Encryption User and Computers, and then right-click Symantec Endpoint Encryption Managed Computers. At this point, we provide a new name for the new group. Now for some information about naming groups. The name must be unique within its group. We have some examples. The finance group can have two subgroups, laptops and desktops. Human resources can also have the same two subgroups, laptops and desktops. The two top-level groups, however, cannot be named human resources. Native policies are applied at the computer level only. They cannot be assigned on a per-user basis. They can be assigned to computers, subgroups, and groups. These are all located within the Symantec Endpoint Encryption Managed Computers container. Each policy is comprehensive and contains all of the possible configurable settings. When applying native policy, only one policy can be applied at a time. If no policy is assigned, it reverts to the installation settings. These are applied when the management agent checks in with the server. Users do have the option to perform immediate check-ins from the client. Clients are not assigned policy before check-in. After policy is assigned, the console displays the name of the policy assigned to the group, and on the next check-in, clients download and apply this policy. Be aware again that clients utilize installation policy until the first check-in. To assign a native policy to a computer, subgroup, or group, from the Management Console under Symantec Endpoint Encryption Managed Computers, locate and highlight the recipient computer, subgroup, or group of the policy. Click the policy, locate the native policy to be assigned to this group within the dialog, and highlight it. Then click OK to dismiss the confirmation message. Be aware that a couple of policy options are only available to certain policy types. Policy Enforced Drive Encryption only works with install time policies, and Workgroup Key Configuration only works with Active Directory and native policies. In this lesson, we talked about enabling policy, the types of policies, the differences between these policies, the order of precedence, and a comparison of the policies.